You will be forced to fight with the Vikings in the bloodiest war in history, and will go up against hundreds of thousands of the world's best fighters and a superhuman soldier, while you try and take down your father's killer and the most disgusting enemy of all, the English. Watch till the end and I'll show you how to beat the English in Vinland Saga, year 1002 AD, Iceland. These cake man eating snooze sucking Scandinavian warriors are about to fight tea drinkers with accents, their cousins, the English. Thor here has to run away from his old badass Viking life and has been hiding out in Iceland. He now has a family, but his sissy man of a son, Thorfinn here, is bored of the peaceful life. Thor's friend here, Leif, tells the kid about a wonderful faraway land full of adventure called Vinland. The harsh winters in Iceland have been getting worse every year, and the village wonders how much longer they'll be able to survive here. Thorfinn finds out from Leif that his family ran away from Norway to live here, making him think his badass family is actually soft. And just then, a military ship arrives at their shore. It's the Yom Vikings, the most brutal and badass warriors in Scandinavia. This man named Floki rushes out and asks to speak to Thors the troll, making the villagers and Thor's family nervous. Thors comes out, but the Yom Vikings bow to him, and we find out Thors was the leader of their crew before he ran away 15 years ago. Speaking in private, Floki lays out the game plan. The English recently slaughtered Danish Vikings in Northumbria, England, and one of the victims was the king of Denmark's sister. And now the king is about to start an all-out war for the blood of England, and he needs warriors. Floki's Yom Vikings have sided with the Danish army and will launch an attack on England next spring. Thor tells him he's out of the killing game, but Floki warns him that the king has called for everyone, even deserters. And if he doesn't join, everyone here will die, so there's that. No choice, Thor accepts the deal, and Floki announces it to the rest of the village, asking other villagers to join the cause. Thor waves him and his men goodbye, and says he will see him on the battlefield very soon, not realizing he will never reach it alive. Before leaving, he confesses to his family he used to be a warrior, and a good one at that. But one day got tired of killing and ran away, but now he must take responsibility for what he's done. Thorfinn gets caught finding Daddy's sword, but he tells him killing is wrong and he shouldn't end up like him. The next day he sets sail with some village recruits, but Leif makes a secret plan with Thorfinn to drop off the young warriors when they make a scheduled pit stop in Norway, and will recruit locals there for the war instead. But on the way, Thorfinn comes out from hiding. Cute but annoyed, Thor is forced to bring him along. They soon pass the Faroe Islands during the middle of their trip and make a scheduled stop to resupply. Sailing between this fjord, Leif has passed by many times, but this time something is off. He notices the town up ahead has fewer houses than before. Thors and him decide to turn around, just as pieces of wood and scrap comes crashing down from above, blocking their way out. Two unknown ships start closing in on them. The gang thinks they're pirates. With archers up on the cliff, they are trapped. Thors can tell no one here is going to stand a chance and gives his son his little sword, telling him to only use violence as a last resort, as he figures out his next move. Look, while this situation seems impossible to get out of, there is a single way involving archers, psychological warfare, and the cover of darkness. Let me explain. These guys could never have known about the mercenaries and had literally zero reason to suspect shit was about to go down, unlike what Game of Thrones did in season 8. The problem is right now is that the journey from Iceland was about 450 kilometers or 280 miles, and they're nearly out of food. Going back right now on a single shot is risky, since even if they could escape right now, they would have to manage with little supplies, plus there's snotty-nosed kids on board, and they just can't eat them, sadly. However, there still is a way they could have escaped by targeting one of the islands that is closer than Iceland that they might have a shot at reaching, which is a place known as the Orkney Islands. If of course they can get out of this place alive. So right now trouble is coming and they have to act fast. So if I was Thor, I would know as a badass we could get out of this alive, but the main problem right now is the archers. Well, they haven't killed us yet and are likely waiting for somebody to give the orders, which means we have some time. I would first move the entire boat straight below one of the walls of the fjord, then use the forestay or mainstay of the boat to our advantage. I would use sail one of two that we have, and then attach the bottom part to the bow of the boat somehow, basically reducing dock visibility from the archers above. This would instantly reduce the archers' clear visibility of us, and this is important because this move would lessen the chances of them taking lucky shots at us. Because how long can someone keep firing in the dark before they get bored, before they get tired? I would then instruct everyone to pick up one of the hanging shields on the outside of the bow. We saw it to provide actual protection under the sail cover. And with everyone as safe as can be, I would then attack the incoming ships, taking inspiration from skirmish tactics in order to target and psychologically mess with our enemy. Skirmish tactics tactics, prioritize harassment of the enemy by short and random attacks, mainly to cause havoc. And this is effective as, unlike general combat that would force the enemy to focus on the present moment to fight, engaging here and there would give the enemy a lot more time on their hands, and this constant sense of danger would make them think more, building up any dangers or fears in their head. The longer they wait for our next attack, just like chronic stress, which is low pressure felt over a prolonged period of time. The same type of effect would happen to these men by engaging in light attacks here and there before returning to our boat, who could keep the enemy at bay and slowly wear them down, with the goal of being to wait it out until nightfall. Because remember, none of this matters if we can't reach the archers. Keeping everyone at bay until nightfall would reduce visibility, and this would allow us to finally go ham under the cover of night, attacking the already weakened men. However many are left, before disabling or killing the leader, and then diving into the pitch black water. With our crew still safe, we could swim around the fjord and essentially take the battle to the archers, killing them swiftly or making them run off, before returning to our ship and sailing out the other way without trouble to Orkney Islands, if this place was out of food. And this was the best move at this point. Thors makes the first move, landing on the enemy ship, showing everyone who's boss, nearly taking the entire ship. This guy, Bjorn, second in command, eats a berserker mushroom and goes full-on rage mode, and he attacks with no mercy. It is glorious. Go watch the anime. Meanwhile, the other enemy ship reaches Thor's group, but they want the kids alive, right as their top fighter crashes down in front of them. Thor returns to his kid and tells the enemies to leave at once. Analyzing the situation, he realizes as long as his kid is here, he can't do shit. Coming up with a new plan, he can tell this guy is the leader, named Askeladd. Thor challenges him to a duel. Whoever wins gets what they want. Askeladd calls Thor by his full title, revealing he was set up by his friend Floki, who personally wants him dead, and not the young Vikings. They prepare for battle. Askeladd cuts the ship's sail, launching a surprise attack, but Thor quickly counters, showing his skills, both nearly equally matched. But Thor soon overwhelms him and baits him into swinging wide, disarming his weapon, and he catches Askeladd off guard, winning the match. But Thor says he can live as long as they surrender, cause a great warrior doesn't need to kill or some BS. But Askeladd checkmates him and dares him to kill him. Suddenly, Askeladd's second in command lands on the ship and takes Thorfinn hostage. They make fun of Thor for assuming they would play fair and just want to test his skills. Thor asks Askeladd to honor the warrior rules and not harm his people. Askeladd finally agrees, admits defeat, but also signals his men to fire their arrows, instantly giving this kid HT nightmares of his daddy for life. Askeladd says he will respect the warrior code and let everyone live, while Thor kicks the bucket, of course. Later, Askeladd's men sail back to their base, but discover Thorfinn has snuck on board and vows to kill them. But since he's so pathetically weak, the men just leave him like a fly on the wall. The boats eventually reach England, near River Humber, as the men stop to get paid for Thor's murder and do what Vikings do best, pillage and plunder for some booty, while Thorfinn struggles to survive and is too dang proud to take free food from his father's murderers. That could either be a touch ungrateful or understandable. Take your pick. He hangs around the village over the next few days and tries to kill Askeladd, but it's too much of a big baby to finish the job. He finally challenges him for a duel in front of his men, and he gives it to him. Thorfinn charges with the power of his father, but he quickly gets his butt kicked as predicted by everybody. And now, back in Iceland. Leif and the others return Thor's belongings to his family and deliver the bad news bears, but Leif promises he will find Thorfinn no matter what. Oh, and Thor's daughter acts all tough until later when she breaks down. Back in England, Thorfinn starts training and learning how to survive by himself, and he comes across a wolf that attacks him, but he manages to kill it, and finally doesn't suck anymore. And now cue his official training arc. Okay, this kid was on the brink of death, but he just killed a wolf, which is amazing, but he's got a ways to go to kill Askeladd. Here's a big one. Wolf and human beings are different. Yes, wolves are terrifying, but they're not as smart as a human. Well, some humans. Okay, so this wolf is during the medieval times, and would have been a big significant kill with a whole lot of high protein and fats, and he could feed somebody for weeks or maybe even months. So, now that he's got his nutrition set, our main character can now finally work on taking down the man that killed his daddy. However, killing is a tall task, and as a kid, there's a risk he won't be mentally ready to pull the trigger when the time comes. This is why if I was him, I would increase the odds we pull this off by relying on something else that could do the killing for us. During this time period, there would have been various poisonous plants, like deadly nightshade, hemlock, and yew in the area, and they were known to be poisonous through ingestion. But there's a problem. Spotting these plants from regular plants would have been tough, and would have depended on local knowledge and expertise in herbalism and foraging. This is why with food set, I would have started finding villagers in this town, and be very charming or persuasive, however you want to do it, and basically find a town nearby and find somebody that can help us, somebody that knows plants and all of their properties, and learn about which ones would have been essential for everyday life, how to use them for food, medicine, because really, citizens at this time, some of them would certainly have herbal knowledge and it would have been something rather common. Worst case, I can target some people who specialize in this field like herbalists, healers, midwives, and many other communities that would have these type of specialists in the town due to their important knowledge. People would have known about them and where they lived, and besides, even if I didn't speak their language, I would have found a freaking piece of paper and pencil and drawn a flower with a death skull on it and act out even the effects of poison. Seriously, you know, like real theater boy type of stuff. Anyways, once we find the helper, I would channel my Viking heritage and force him to help us on the spot and make a powder, and ideally a liquid form of any poison he could. As I said, we might not have what it takes to kill Askeladd right now, but using poison sure would have opened up a lot more ways to creatively and discreetly kill him without us being there. Besides, there's no one else around, his family's not nearby. No one will know the severe dishonor he did by taking the easy way out, or dare I say the smarter way out, by maybe sneaking the poison into the food or water supply. So Askeladd's men get ready to move on from the village, but Thorfinn challenges Askeladd a final time. Now thinking that he's some hot shit since his training arc started like 10 minutes ago, Askeladd indulges him and they get it on. But this time everyone notices that Thorfinn has gotten better, and they're actually mildly impressed. Thorfinn pulls out a throwing knife move, nearly harming him, but he still gets his butt kicked and walks away like nothing happened. Thorfinn begs him to stay, so Askeladd finally throws him a freaking bone and says if he proves himself on the field of battle, then one day Askeladd will reward him with a proper duel, making a warrior's promise. As if that's meaning anything to him. Many of the men think Thorfinn won't go through all that trouble, but boy, he is 100% serious and agrees to the deal. And he ends up joining their team as they set sail to do more business around the English shores. Recently, Denmark has sent their armies and hired Vikings to help them annoy the English. While the Danish king prepares to launch a full-scale invasion in the next few years, here we find Askeladd's pirates wanting in on the action. And they soon run into some actually full-on legit Vikings who are having some trouble in the middle of a skirmish. Askeladd offers to help in exchange for half the booty and booty. The Vikings don't like pirates, but they agree to work together, and suddenly some English try to ambush them, forcing both groups to go on the offensive. While Thorfinn in the back watches in awe, he remembers what Askeladd's promise was and starts trying to be a man's man, getting lucky and killing his first Englishman, stabbing the crumpets right out of him, unlocking his inner badass. And then he spends the next few years learning the warrior's way on Askeladd's team, becoming what his father always wanted him to not be, a sick-ass killer and a pirate. He soon becomes Askeladd's main scout, and one day goes on a routine mission to check out this local area. You know, doing God's work and killing some more English bastards. But he ends up getting pinned down and exhausts himself, kicking their butts. The next day, two English lassies find Thorfinn passed out by a river. They rescue him back to theirs and give him food and shelter, while hearing his potato-filled mouth-sounding language. Realizing, oh shoot, he's Danish, the daughters think, hey, they should hand him over to the enemy, but the mother says, nah, and starts to de-lice his hair instead, because that's what they do over there apparently. An Englishman soon passes by and states they're looking for a Danish kid on the loose, but the mother tells him Thorfinn is her son, saving him. That night, the daughter gets annoyed at her mother for pulling this kind of shit, but the mother thinks that no one becomes a pirate as a kid unless they've been through some, really tough shit. The daughter's about to rat him out when Thorfinn escapes the house, burning an empty house near the coastline. He signals Askeladd and his men waiting on their boat that this area is ripe for plundering. Some English soldiers show up, forcing Thorfinn to kill them, while Askeladd's men quickly arrive and start going ham. But Thorfinn spots the mother from earlier crying and feels bad for a split second, but then he goes back to being an absolute menace, because he's got his priorities in the right place. So a few more years of good old Danish-English fighting goes by, and the war only gets worse as the King of Denmark tells everybody that they can take a break, because next summer they will finally launch their invasion on England with the king leading the charge. Meanwhile, Askeladd's men worry they don't have enough loot for winter and have already ransacked all the villages around, and there's no more booty to be had. So with the Danish invasion not happening for a while, and now there's a whole lot of infighting happening in France, they decide to head there to see if maybe they can make some money instead. They soon arrive and see all the lords of the land fighting each other. Knowing this fortress is holding a lot of treasure, Askeladd tells Thorfinn to make contact with the invading clan and offer them a deal. But Thorfinn tells him he's still waiting on their duel, so Askeladd says if he can get the head of a general, then they can talk. Since being a scout is one of the worst jobs there is, and there's a high turnover rate apparently. Meanwhile, Thorfinn reaches the clan leader and tells him they can help their clan break into the fortress in exchange for half the loot. The clan leader tells Thorfinn the river leading up to the fortress is blocked by a waterfall, and there's no way they can attack from the back. But Thorfinn manages to convince him they'll take care of it and makes a deal. The next day, the clan leader waits for Askeladd's men to show up, wondering where they could be, just as the ground starts rumbling and Viking boats burst out from the forest beyond being carried by Askeladd's men. As they run down the hill, Thorfinn finds out the identity of the clan general here, thanks to his fancy helmet. As he rushes in with everyone on a different mission, he launches over the cliff, latching onto the fortress walls, while Askeladd's group land their ships into the water next to the fortress, going from the back while Thorfinn takes the front, but are surprisingly met with crossbow defenses, throwing Askeladd's men off guard. Okay, well there was a much simpler way that could have prevented these men from running into any problems, and would have made their day way easier in order to be able to take down this fortress, and it involves stiff wood and fire. Let me explain. During medieval times, from the 9th to the 12th century, social and political structure in France was ruled by feudalism, which means there was way more lords around and there was a bunch of fortified structures like this that played a crucial role in defense and governance of noble families. But it's this type of defense that is commonly known as a river fortress or water castle, and they were designed to take advantage of the river, with direct access from the back allowing easy access to supplies from the sea, meaning this place can hold out against a siege for a long time. This is why if I was team young Vikings, I would do what these guys did, but way more effectively, and I would have chosen to charge with the boat during the cover of nightfall instead. But I would have carried 3 tree logs or simple wood on the top of the boat doused in oil as well, targeting 2 points of the fortress, the corner here and the entrance here, leaving someone at both points there to set it up in flames as well. The darkness would instantly reduce visibility, and here's why. The entire structure of the fortress is made of wood except the stone bridge. This means Team 2 leaving the second log on fire at the entrance along with log 1 in the corner would have caused the fortress men inside to split up to handle both fires. See, divide and conquer. And the front entrance would be compromised and would have caused the archers above to naturally lose their biggest advantage of having high ground advantage, which is suitable for their long-range weaponry. This would have also made them effectively useless in taking ship 1 on as it sailed into the back of the fortress, and would have allowed our men to enter without too much trouble or hassle, and take out the fortress from within without fear of arrows right away. The good thing about Viking longships is that they were designed to be lightweight and versatile, meaning even Team 2 during this time could have also begun making its way into the water as well to reach us, since the fortress would have been too distracted due to the fire and dark visibility to stop them anyways, leaving us with 2 full ships and no defenses short or long range to stop us from plundering this thing to all heck. The fortress tries to prepare new defenses when Thorfinn lands right in front of the commander. He charges in, takes no prisoners, and swiftly kills a whole bunch of people, and takes the commander's head. But whoopsie, it falls accidentally into the river, which forces him to jump down and get it because duh, he wants to kill Askeladd, all prim and proper, you know, way of the warrior and all that crap. Askeladd's men take the back, quickly overwhelming the forces and taking down the fortress. The French clan they teamed up with is finally led in from the front, but plans to double-cross Askeladd's group. But they discover they've already left with the gold and treasure, and Askeladd's group sails off thinking Thorfinn died, but he shows up with the commander's head to demand his duel. Askeladd says, alright, sure, let's do it, but let's wait a minute until we leave this area, okay? And delays the fight again. Now some time has passed, and we're all set for winter until the Danish invasion next summer, and everybody heads back to their original village in Denmark to meet up with their accountant named Jorm. He goes through their expenses while everybody chills out, and Askeladd finally gives Thorfinn the duel he promised. Everybody gathers outside as Thorfinn charges at him, showing he's increased in speed and strength, and Thorfinn tries to use his close-range dagger up and quickly overwhelms Askeladd this time and almost outsmarts him. However, Askeladd then starts to pretend he doesn't remember killing Thors because he's killed so many pathetic losers, insulting his dad even more and pisses Thorfinn off even more, and he gets super emotional and miscalculates his moves and ends up getting beaten again. Askeladd tells Thorfinn he made the mistake of losing his cool and tells him he's still got a lot to learn, breaking his shoulder before dinner, before ordering his men to put it back in. Later, everybody gets super drunk as balls, while Thorfinn hangs outside. Gorm's servant brings him dinner, but he makes fun of her for choosing to be a servant, and she tells him she has nowhere to go. So Thorfinn tells her of a place his dad told him about called Vinland. So fast forward 7 months later, the invasion of England finally begins, and all of Denmark's finest warriors have gathered, including Loki's young Vikings, plus 4 brigades. The king leads everyone into northern England, and quickly gets 5 English towns to surrender, near Gainsborough. The king has also brought along his non-violent son, Canute, to make a man out of him, but most of Denmark doesn't think that's possible. It is now October 13th, 13 AD, London, England. They soon reach the capital of Londinium, and they see what they're up against. This bridge fortress that has been under attack for years because nobody's been able to get through it, and they also spot a familiar Danish guy. This guy, Thorkel, who is the strongest known Danish warrior aside from Thor's, but this time is sided with the English for money. Askeladd's men get a little bit nervous, but he tells them he's sided with the Danish because he thinks they'll win this war. Since so many clans have joined the English invasion, there isn't enough profit to go around, but if they help capture this location, they might impress some powerful people watching this battle, which could promote their pirate career somehow. He plans to use Thorfinn this time to take care of Thorkel, and tells him if he can get Thorkel's head, he will get another chance at a duel, knowingly sending Thorkel to his probable death. Meanwhile, Floki tells the king of Denmark that Thorkel can't be convinced to join their side, but the king tells him to resume the attack, sending in Danish ships to hit the bridge from below. Thorkel surprises them by literally throwing tree logs down at the ships, destroying them in one go like a baller. It's pretty freaking cool. He makes fun of the Danish king right as Thorfinn shows up to surprise attack him, dodging his strike and avoiding his first moves. But Thorfinn quickly realizes if he gets hit once, oh shoot, he is dead. He goes for the throat but misses, because Thorkel's weak points are way too high up. So he aims low, sweeps the leg and hits the knee, almost hitting Thorkel's vitals, but he catches the blade and starts slamming Thorfinn around while Askeladd watches disappointed. The horn sounds off and everybody is forced to retreat for today. Thorkel thinks Thorfinn is now super dead, but he surprise slices off his fingers. Impressing so much, he asks for Thorfinn's name, finding out he's the son of Thor before seeing him escape, and he is super happy with today's battle and tells him they'll meet again soon. Later, everybody on the Danish side is beaten up and the king is starting to think, whoops, they might never win, and they must capture the rest of England before they run out of supplies. Floki manages to convince him to leave 4,000 soldiers behind while him and everyone else heads west, leaving his son to command the forces with Floki, making him and everybody else nervous. Nearby, Thorfinn finally exits the river downstream, running into Askeladd as he joins the king's march west. Back at Londinium, the king's son ends up not leading any battles and just sits there and prays a lot, and everybody's just forced to wait and wait. Now Thorkel in the fortress starts to wonder why is nobody attacking them and starts to get super sad, but finds out from this one soldier that the Danish king is left, his son in charge. So what do you expect happens? Thorkel gets the most evil idea of all time. So 1 month later, Askeladd's group gets greedy and separates from the king's army and makes a pit stop to pillage and plunder a little bit because hey, you know, bad habits die hard. However, some of his men wonder when they'll go back, but Askeladd reveals a rumor that he's heard, that the Danish king has left the country already, since Denmark is expected to soon win this war, so they might as well just chill out. But that night, a Danish messenger looking for the king's army accidentally runs into Askeladd's men instead. Desperate and on the clock, the messenger tells Askeladd the bad news. Their Danish army in Londinium has been wiped out. The prince has been taken hostage, and Thorkel and his 500 men are planning to surprise attack the king's army soon. He asks these pirates to help them rescue their Danish prince, and Askeladd agrees, cutting his head off, and says they'll go rescue the prince and then ransom him to either side that pays the most. And everybody's like, hey, good plan! The next day, Thorkel and his men pass through the forest with the prince as hostage. Just as they can tell something is off, Thorkel gets handed a spear and listens closely before firing at a troop hiding out nearby, forcing the Danish army to come out from hiding, and they state they know their prince has been taken hostage and have come to rescue him. They warn Thorkel that over 2,000 men surround him as they speak, and maybe you should hand over the prince now or else. But Thorkel knows they're full of shit, but happily hands the prince over, confusing the Danish army. Thorkel says now there's nothing holding them back, and they're now free to fight him. With their manhood now on the line and no reason to hold back, the Danish army hesitates since this was not part of the plan. The prince's caretaker tells them they must retreat since they have the prince, but Thorkel's insults get to their heads and they end up charging in, falling exactly into Thorkel's trap as he unleashes hell all onto them, killing nearly all the troops in minutes. But that's when everyone starts to smell a nearby fire, as smoke quickly covers the area, blinding every single one of them. And Thorkel thinks this fire is suspicious, since the Danish army wouldn't risk harming their own prince, and suspects there's a third party in this fight. Okay, well this might seem like an impossible mission, and it probably is. There's a much more effective way to handle this. Look, these guys have had time on their hands, which means I would have first gotten some info about Thorkel's weaknesses, since he's like way too overpowered. So basically approaching him like any other bad guy is super dumb. So we know that Thorkel has a bloodlust for combat, and he would happily jump into a fight without too much logic. And thinking about it this way, you know, it could have allowed the men to see in advance that giving Thorkel a logical way out with a bluff wouldn't have done shit. The current young Vikings' plan of setting the forest on fire was good, but there was too much risk, and they were still relying way too much on Thorfinn. I would first have waited to see if there was an area that favored vertical fighting more favorably, where our forces could have ambushed from higher up, using ranged weaponry and tactics instead of using close-up fighting, like by selecting areas with either defensive walls or elevated terrains with better high grounds or commanding the area, also with its clear visibility, or a place like River Avon, which would have been flowing through the area at that time and would have offered a natural barrier with more potential ambush points along its banks. All these points would have made this mission way more feasible to coordinate an ambush, or a defensive maneuver using multiple strategic positions in and around the area of Bath that they were already in. and really focus on a fighting style that doesn't put them directly in the killing machine that is Thorkell's face, because like everybody knows this would end badly if you get up close. They really should have thought this through a little bit more. The prince's men get cornered by Thorkell's men, but Thorfinn shows up soaked in water, pulling out his knives to save the prince. A forest fire suddenly separates his group from Thorkell's. Thorkell smiles and tells him he can't wait to fight the son of Thor, and will let him have the prince for now, and will hunt them all down like a predator before the war is over.
You're now working for your father's killer in the middle of a war, and will be forced to help him fight the English and this superhuman soldier that will stop at nothing to track you down and kill you. Watch till the end, I'll show you how to beat the final English war in Vinland Saga. This kid Thorfinn and his father's killer Askeladd are about to die a brutal death. Their armies have just been destroyed, and they've been left with the Danish king's son, Prince Canute, and his caretaker Ragnar. With no choice, they must return him to the Danish king in the town of Gainsborough before they get hunted down by this psycho god known as Thorkell. Askeladd leads the group to a nearby river and asks this ferryman to send a message to a familiar friend on the other side of the island. While they wait to hear back, the team scout with the giant ears called Ear, funnily enough, warns his group that Thorkell's men are now less than a day away from catching them, putting them all on edge, including Askeladd's right-hand man, Bjorn. A little later, two mysterious men show up at Askeladd's location and take them across the sea to the only country that hates the English more than the Danes. Wales! No, not those kind. While Thorkell just misses them and plots his next evil plan to catch and kill them all. Askeladd reaches the other side, but tells his team that they'll continue back on foot to reach Gainsborough. The Danes are hated in this country, but Askeladd tells them it's their only option, ordering Thorfinn to go watch over the prince for extra protection. He whines about it, so Askeladd promises to duel him again. Once they reach Gainsborough, it's a thing. Go watch the rest of the episodes, so he can finally avenge his father's death like a warrior. The man who rescued them offers to guide them on their journey, as long as the prince promises to not attack Wales when he becomes king, but also thinks he looks a little too soft to do anything. On the way, they cross two soldiers guarding the area. Their guide waves hello, but Askeladd tells him to be careful because he can sense it's a trap. Thorfinn also senses an ambush, just as arrows fire and kill their team's horses. Meanwhile, back in England, the Danes report to Canute's father, the king, that they're winning the war, taking control of Wessex, but they haven't been able to confirm his son's death, making this guy get nervous. Back in Wales, Askeladd tries to calm these men down, but they don't trust the Danes and want to take the prince as hostage. But Askeladd knows they could have just killed him if they wanted to, and this is all a show. He quickly asks Canute to say some words to try and intimidate the Welsh, but the prince is pathetic and he does nothing. Ragnar tells Askeladd to not manipulate the prince and handle it himself, while Thorfinn calls the prince pathetic to his face. Askeladd lets the enemy in on their plan and asks to speak to the enemy leader. This guy says they need something in return for letting Danes pass through their land, or their big boss will look weak. Askeladd then reveals a secret that he's never told anyone, and says he's a direct descendant of the legendary King Arthur, and is part Danish and Welsh. Shocking this guy, and Askeladd says him being mixed blood means if they let him pass through, they'll be able to control Prince Canute once he becomes king, so Denmark will never attack Wales. He convinces them that he's legit by saying he hates Denmark with a passion, and scores a deal to let them pass through, pretending to be Welsh prisoners. On the way, Thorfinn watches over the prince, but the prince catches him judging him, and finally starts talking for the first time, shocking everyone. He tells Thorfinn that he stays quiet most of the time because his words could have major political repercussions. But does Thorfinn care about that? No, he still judges him and forces the prince out of his shell, freaking out Ragnar. The gang travels across the land, but quickly run into massive snow and start running out of supplies. Askeladd comes up with a new plan and tells everyone they'll cut through the enemy territory to reach Gainsborough faster, making all the men worry that Askeladd has just lost his mind. They continue marching for a few more days, but the storm starts to get worse and worse and worse. Now desperate, they raid the first house they run into, but discover it's an orphanage. They steal food from innocent children and push around this monk. He tells them to spare some food for the kids, but Askeladd says they'll be fine because they won't need it where they're going, telling his men to kill them so no one escapes and snitches on them. Ragnar thinks this is wrong, but Askeladd says it's for the prince's safety, so checkmate. However, this one girl manages to slip away unnoticed, spreading word to the surrounding towns of the Danes' invasion, and this news quickly reaches Thorkell. Determined to enjoy this war before it ends, their men rush straight for them. A few days later, the snow prevents Askeladd's scout from hearing incoming enemies, so they pee on the floor to help. Great. But it does let him realize there are about 50 to 100 men incoming east of them. I will never underestimate the power of pee again, but that being said, this group did two big things wrong that led them to being found. First up, rounding up the villages at night was one of them. Yeah, it looks cool, but it was completely pointless. Instead, they should have killed them all in the house. It would have saved their entire group. Here's why. Inside, the villagers have been confined to a limited space, making it easier to control and kill them without any of them running away. And this would eliminate the risk of noise spreading in the forest, because again, they're in enemy territory. And the big problem here was that this group assumed too much and failed to account for for how their enemy was thinking and how they could have reacted. Especially since Ear couldn't hear much, it means their only trump card couldn't save them, and this caused them to get caught. But even then, there was another mistake that finally cost them getting found, and it has to do with how they've been traveling through Wales. The group is pressed for time and had to keep marching. Were struggling because they needed more rest than they were getting. This is why if I was them, I would have set up a genius system that would have allowed the group to rest and continue traveling at the same time. It's called staggered rest break. Very catchy, I know. It's a system where only a portion of the group rests at a time while the rest keep moving. And this makes sure that there's always movement and vigilance where everyone can get a full rest. Here's the breakdown. You split up the group into 5 units. 1 unit could rest while the numbers 2 to 5 continue marching, just at a slower pace. Rinse and repeat the process for 3 to 4 hours until the entire group takes a break. Well, yeah, it might seem silly, but this would have helped prevent excessive fatigue to build up. And by marching all day and sleeping at night, actually made the group slower due to fatigue buildup, which also would have increased the group's risk of making more errors on the journey. They were sloppy, don't you see it? Tactical naps around 10 to 20 minutes could have significantly boosted alertness and energy levels without having them resting for long periods, and it could have helped them not make mistakes and keep getting further and further away from the enemy. Terrifying the whole group, they wonder who snitched on them. Askeladd tells his men they gotta move, while he rushes his men to finish making the getaway sleds, and asks Bjorn to secretly do the thing. Ooh, mystery. Nearby, Thorfinn spends time with the prince, who turns out is actually a really good cook, and they sort of bond for half a sec, but then they get word that the English have found them, and Askeladd's men are holding them back, but they worry that larger numbers of them might soon show up. So they're headed for another town, not part of the plan. Ragnar doesn't like this, and asks to speak to Askeladd, finding out he's on the front line of battle. This guy promises to take Ragnar to him, but quickly gets stabbed outside. The men apologize and are only following orders. While Askeladd shows up, Ragnar tells him to promise to watch over the prince, because they're about to be screwed. He tells the men that the king tried to get Prince Canute killed, and that's why he brought him into this war, since the king has 2 sons. He's worried that the country will be split apart after he dies, so he tries to kill the one son to prevent this, and he'll try again once they reach Gainsborough. He says his brother will help them make arrangements to escape once they reach, but dies soon after, which changes things for Askeladd's plans. He quickly tells the prince that Ragnar is dead and orders Thorfinn to be the prince's bodyguard as they try to escape. A little later, Askeladd updates Bjorn on Ragnar's death, saying he made the prince weak and they need strength to survive. But Bjorn is worried the prince might now crumble under pressure. The gang stops for a break to interrogate the monk who owned the orphanage, but find out he's not talking, so they start chopping his hands and are about to give him a Norse nose job when Ear alerts them that more enemies are coming from the south, but he's not sure how many. They wonder why the English are attacking at night, because that's not normal, but the monk starts laughing evilly and says Thorkel's Danish army are coming to kill them. Thorkel and his mercenaries don't care about countries and fight whoever's in their way. And nearby, Thorkel spots Askeladd's group and orders his men to surround the village while he takes them head on and starts closing in. Meanwhile, Askeladd finds out more bad news, that some of his men plan to betray him just now and think Askeladd's luck has finally run out. But he tells the men to follow whoever they want because he's leaving, splitting his group into 2, while Thorfinn, the prince, and Bjorn follow him, marching on through the night. The next morning, Askeladd's men kill the traitors, but notice the others around him are starting to go against him. Crossing this bridge, he asks them to destroy it before Thorkel's men arrive, but they think it's pointless since the water is too shallow anyways, and now think their leader is finally out of ideas. Noticing what's going on, Askeladd calls Bjorn and secretly tells him to bring the prince to their carriage and prepare to escape, just in case. Everyone notices something shining over the hills nearby, not realizing it's from Thorkel's men's weapons. Spotting Askeladd's team, he throws a single spear down there and instantly kills 4 men, scaring the shit out of everyone. Askeladd tries to calm them down and says destroying the bridge will force the enemy to go by foot, which means they'll need to give up their supplies and won't be able to keep up with their army size. But his men don't trust him anymore. Askeladd tries to leave himself, but now everyone boxes in these 4, while this monk guy takes a swig of wine to compensate. They want to bring the prince to Thorkel, so they'll be spared. Askeladd warns them Thorkel won't let them live, but they won't listen. Out of option, Askeladd tells everyone he secretly hated everyone here since the beginning because the Danish are so disgusting, and instantly cuts this guy through his helmet while Bjorn launches the sled away from Askeladd. Okay, everyone here is ganging up on Askeladd and forming a mutiny just now. It was only a matter of time, but boy was it a bad time to do it. He should have tried to keep the team united during this time by addressing their feelings, I know. But hear me out, because this was actually the most important thing he could have done to prevent them from getting screwed, because at this point they can't escape, they're surrounded, but they still have one trick up their sleeve. Askeladd is known for being a smooth talker to get out of any situation, but his reputation now means no one will trust anything he says. But I would focus the attention on others instead, because Askeladd knew shit was going south and arranged for Bjorn and the others to get on the horses. This means he could have planned a quick last-minute plan and created a fight between Bjorn and Thorfinn. Thorfinn and Bjorn already have a rocky relationship, so this wouldn't be suspicious since both are skilled fighters. And them getting into a fight that got physical could create the perfect distraction. A fight about loyalty and Bjorn making Thorfinn lose his shit would not seem out of place for his character, and they could have swiftly moved the fight to the front of the circle, getting more crazier over a few minutes. Maybe even try grabbing some of the weapons from around the circle to fight each other. This move would also subconsciously signal to the men around that Thorfinn might actually be on their side, and it would have been that moment that the men's defenses would have been down slightly. While a slight moment like this might not seem like much, this would have created an opening within the circle big enough to allow the sled to take off at a moment's notice, with either Askeladd or the prince driving it. While these two could have easily hopped on since they would have already been at the front of the sled, it would have allowed the gang to escape in one piece. Thorkel watches from the distance, but he doesn't know what's going on and thinks they're having a fight. He gets mad that they're fighting without him and rushes down to teach them a lesson. Meanwhile, Bjorn drives the sled but notices some men gaining on them. He dares them to come at him, but they decide to harm his horse instead, making him kinda sad for a second, and the sled crashes. Livid, he takes out a berserker mushroom and eats it, instantly turning him into an insane monster of a human being, while Thorfinn rushes back to save Askeladd so he can be the one to finally kill him in a duel. Back at Askeladd's location, he realizes he can't keep this up and waits for Thorkel's men to catch up. He gets pissed off for a second and cuts another guy straight through his helmet, shocking everyone around him. They take up arrows instead and clip Askeladd in the leg. They wonder why he cares so much about the prince, but he just replies with a vague answer that no one understands, and says he's been waiting for the true king to come back from Avalon. Thorkel's armies finally arrive, while Askeladd's men tell him the prince escaped and blame it on Askeladd, trying to suck up to him. But Thorkel doesn't give an F and ends up killing them all. Suddenly Thorfinn comes in to charge at Thorkel, but he literally punches his horse back. Thorfinn's craziness shocks Thorkel's army and even Askeladd. Thorfinn gets up and challenges Thorkel to a duel, and winner gets Askeladd. Thorfinn rinses and repeats his moves but can't make contact, realizing Thorkel is wearing chainmail armor. Thorkel knows Thorfinn is the son of Thor's, the only person stronger than him, and reveals to him that his father was a nobody whose skills got him noticed by a noble that liked him so much he became a noble himself by marrying the noble's daughter. Thorfinn is shocked and wants to know more, but Thorkel wants him to put up a better fight first. Meanwhile, Prince Canute wakes up after the crash and sees Bjorn fighting the others, and during all of this crazy, he has the most chill chat with the monk while this goes on. It is kinda shocking, and the monk drops some harsh truth bombs on this kid, like how Ragnar didn't love him properly because he babied him too much and this actually harmed him. And the prince finally realizes that nobody's gonna save him and they must save themselves. Bjorn returns winning the match but injured, and the prince tells him they're going back to Askeladd because he has a plan, giving his first full-on inspirational speech. Back at Thorfinn's location, he realizes he must immobilize Thorfinn before hitting his vital organs. He manages to make a single cut, but it's not deep enough. Getting pissed off, he loses control and gets the shit kicked out of him and gets a face full of snow. He wakes up moments later and sees Thorkel waiting for him and offers him time to recover first. Thorfinn thinks he's hot shit right now and tries to rejoin the match, but realizes his arm is broken. Askeladd signs on as his coach and says if Thorfinn wants his duel he's been waiting for so long, he should listen, saying he saw Thorkel nearly lose a battle once before and thinks he knows his weak point. Nearby, Thorkel thinks about Thorfinn's dad and says he misses him, wishes he escaped with him to Iceland when Thorfinn was born, and was sad when he found out he died. Thorfinn gets ready for another round and this time listens to Askeladd's instructions, dodging each blow more calm than ever, and draws him in, while Askeladd blinds him with the sun's reflection, allowing Thorfinn to catch him off guard and punch his jaw, knocking him down. But that's when Thorfinn loses control again and jumps on him to take his eye out without a weapon. Thorkel's men rush to stop him and pin him down, but Thorkel gets mad at the men for getting in his way. And just then, Prince Canute's squad arrives back and tells everyone to stop fighting. Thorkel tells them to piss off, but Canute makes fun of their fighting style, saying they fight without honor. That's like, oh, that's a big deal. And Thorkel knows he's right and announces that Thorfinn has beat him and lets him go. Prince Canute tells everyone that Askeladd and Thorfinn are now under his care and tells everyone what's really going on. His father planned to have him killed in battle so his older brother could become king, and now the Danish kingdom is in jeopardy. Unless they go to the town of Gainsborough to stop him, Thorkel thinks the prince isn't so tough and tries to scare him. But then he sees this kid has got the eyes of a leader, and Thorkel tells him his only regret was not spending more time with Thor's, because he could have shown him what a true warrior was, and agrees to let the prince go fight his king, as long as him and his men can help, but warns him if he sees the prince get soft, he will kill him. The prince agrees, and Askeladd also apologizes to him, revealing he killed Ragnar, but now wants to serve him even if it costs him his life. So enemy and friends squad up as they head on to take on the real enemy. Reaching Gainsborough, they pass by the leader of the Yom Vikings, Floki. Prince Canute tells Askeladd to stay cool because they need time to prepare. Since they don't have many allies here, he orders Thorkel to go make friends with the leaders of the other Danish clans and invite the chieftains to join, while him, Askeladd, and Thorfinn head to meet the king of Denmark. They plan to assassinate the king, since if he dies now, Canute will become king since his older brother is still in Denmark, but Askeladd needs an scapegoat to shift the blame. They reach the king's chambers, but Thorfinn can tell it's a trap to kill Prince Canute. They cautiously approach the king, while Askeladd sees his face for the first time. He reveals when he was younger, he took the crown from his cruel father, and says the crown turns rulers into monsters, basically admitting that he's a servant to power. Anyways, the king says Prince Canute cannot be king, but he will give him a plot of land in Cornwall to go live out the rest of his days, but if he refuses, he dies. But of course the prince says no cause it's Cornwall and ew, angering the king and his men. Askeladd interrupts with a plan and tells the king to reconsider, revealing Prince Canute brought mercenary Thorkel to their side, which will help Denmark long term. And the king's actions today could be risky and maybe even split up his generals in the country. The king thinks Askeladd is persuasive and takes a liking to him, but says his name sounds like a made-up servant name. This causes him to get more angry than ever before, and Thorfinn notices, but he manages to calm down. The king says he will throw a party in their honor tonight and soon offers them gifts to thank him. Prince Canute tells these two that the king has no reason to kill them now because he wants to be seen as a wise king, so they agree to play it cool for now while still remaining under his protection. That night, everyone celebrates with the king while these two discuss tactics to kill the king. Askeladd says it will be hard because he can tell this king is smart, so they should wait for the perfect opportunity. And suddenly Ragnar's brother pops up, finding out Ragnar is dead. The prince tells him he doesn't plan to go into exile, shocking him for a sec, and reports back to the king. But Askeladd is worried that the brother doesn't seem trustworthy and predicts the king will soon offer them all pieces of land to isolate them, and if they refuse, it'll look bad for them. So the king wins either way. But Askeladd comes up with a new plan. The next day he buys a servant and dresses her up as Prince Canute, sailing down the town, just as the servant gets shot. Askeladd announces to the town that someone has shot the prince, not realizing someone Thorfinn used to know has just spotted him. Meanwhile, the assassin tries to escape, but Thorfinn is waiting nearby to catch him and kill him, just as he runs into the person he used to know. Town's guards arrive and think Thorfinn is one of the assassins, but recognize his small knives. Apparently, Thorkel's defeat has reached this town, and they know Thorfinn is the son of Thor's. Hearing this name makes this man confirm that this is Thorfinn, the boy he's been looking for years, and says his name is Lee, Thor's best friend. Nearby, the real Prince Canute comes out from hiding and thanks her for being the best shield of meat ever, and confirms that there are enemies in this town. But back to Thorfinn. They remember each other, but Leif finds out about Thorfinn's vengeance mission to kill Askeladd. He wants to save Thorfinn's innocent and accidentally annoys the shit out of Thorfinn and chases him away, but Leif is determined to save him soon. Elsewhere, Floki reports to the king that they failed to kill his son. The king knows Askeladd is behind this, and he is the one spreading rumors about the king's involvement. Meanwhile, Askeladd updates the gang about rumors of the king being evil has now spread across the town, since no one can prove if it's true or false. This will force the king to be on his best behavior, and Ragnar's brother then leaves back home, but Askeladd reveals to the prince that he intentionally let him listen into their conversation. If he's a mole, he will tell the king about this, making him think they don't want a decisive battle. The next day, before the council meets and king's announcement, Askeladd finally agrees to give Thorfinn his duel, while Prince Canute serves as witness. Askeladd is just chill as a cucumber, but says he has one appointment before this. Apparently, Bjorn never fully recovered from his wounds, trying to kill the prince and wants to go out like a man. However, Bjorn reveals that he knows Askeladd hated all his men this whole time, but is sad that Askeladd never considered him his friend. He attacks Askeladd, but of course gets critically injured, and Askeladd says Bjorn was his only friend, making him all happy bromance stuff before he dies. Now, back to the battle with Thorfinn. Oh yeah, Askeladd drops his weapon to make it easier for Thorfinn. Oh, this is crazy. Thorfinn is insane. What is he doing? He's doing the same thing over and over again. He's been trying to fight Askeladd and failing for years because of one simple thing, his emotions. Askeladd has 40 years on him and knows him better than anyone, and him throwing down his sword means he is insanely confident, which is a bad sign. True confidence is gained when your belief and experience form an unbreakable idea in your head that you have shit figured out, and this directly transfers over to fighting, which is why, despite Askeladd's older age, this is something that makes him an opponent we can't easily beat, especially since he knows what buttons of ours to push. So the simplest thing to do would be to stuff our ears. Hear me out now, this might seem silly, but this would muffle Askeladd, and he won't be able to get inside of our heads, because we need to stay composed and manage our temper. Askeladd might have way more knowledge and experience, but he's older, which means his stamina is his weak point, which means with no dangers of him getting to us mentally, it's only a matter of time before we tire him out, and that's when we close in and kill him. This pisses him off, and he instantly loses his temper again and gets his ass kicked by Askeladd for the 1,000,000th time, and now is annoyed that he never learns to control his temper and gets sloppy, but offers to teach him how to kill the person he despises. He briefly mentions his childhood, about how he was raised as the illegitimate child of a powerful leader, and how he won over his father's attention with his sword skills and plotted to kill him for 2 years. He basically uses this story to tell Thorfinn to fight smarter, not harder, by first letting his wounds fully heal. The day of the royal council arrives, and all the lords of Denmark show up. Rumors of Canute's attempted assassination is heard around the meeting, and some villagers discuss who will be the next king. Meanwhile, Thorfinn is having a 15-year-old life crisis outside of the village and starts fighting people for no reason, getting put in the town jail. But Leif goes to see him and brings up a magical country that Thors and him always talked about, Vinland. A pretty land where they could start the perfect life, and inspires Thorfinn to stop creating his villain origin story so they can go create their perfect life together. Back at the meeting, the king thanks the prince and Askeladd's group for everything they've done and announces they will soon attack Ireland, but changes it to Wales last minute, the secret home country of Askeladd, shocking him. He wonders if this is just a coincidence, or if someone found out his secret. Not realizing that Floki across the table caught his face, and now thinks that Wales has something to do with Askeladd's weakness, updating the king. Meanwhile, Askeladd does what he does best and outthinks the shit out of the situation by trying to 4D chess his way out of this. Thorkel asks Askeladd how his team managed to go up through Wales without running into trouble, but Askeladd straight up tells him his secret. Thorkel comedically says this situation doesn't look good for him, but will keep the secret to himself right as the king calls Askeladd to approach him. But Askeladd speaks out and says he thinks attacking Wales is not a smart move because his men are too tired to continue fighting. The king announces he is impressed with Askeladd's honesty, going to hug him, and he secretly tells him he did research on Askeladd and knows what him and his son are up to, and offers to spare Wales if he kills Prince Canute and pledges loyalty to him. He knows Askeladd comes from a servant family and insults his mother, pissing Askeladd off, and he goes against Prince Canute's plan and calls out the king in front of everyone, insulting him, causing the guards to try and attack. But Askeladd then threatens to kill the king if anyone tries it. The king asks to be spared, but Askeladd cuts his head off and shocks literally everyone because nobody was thinking this would happen, and starts killing others one by one. Thorkel thinks Askeladd has lost his mind, but Prince Canute says he's only pretending so the kingdom doesn't suspect they're working together. Elsewhere, Leif tries to get Thorfinn to go home, but he bails last minute to head back to the king's meeting. Seeing the shit show happening and Askeladd inside, he rushes in, but sees Prince Canute fatally stab Askeladd, acting as the hero to his people and setting the stage for his rule. Thorfinn rushes to Askeladd and begs him not to die, but Askeladd apologizes for not giving him another battle, but tells him to stop living in the past and go live his life where his real battle awaits him, and kicks the bucket. Prince Canute nearly collapses from killing someone, but Thorkel helps him stand to look tall and strong in front of the people. Thorfinn tries to take a swing at Prince Canute, but he spares Thorfinn cause, fair. Later, Thorfinn is seen living his life and finding a new path beyond revenge.
But what do you guys think about the video? Let us know what you like about it and what you didn't like about it. Don't forget to like, subscribe, and leave a comment down below. And as always, don't forget to check out our How to Beat playlist.